So just firstly, just to give you a brief background, I know you're all familiar with who we are and what we do, but just to really take it from the top and just revisit that very, very briefly. So as you know, my name's Alper. The company I work for is called Creative Medical Research. We're an independent research company specializing in medical devices. We're UK-based. Aside from conducting commissioned research, which is the bulk of what we do, we also every so often carry out self-funded research, and today's session is our latest of those sessions. So we'll be spending up to 90 minutes, no longer, just really discussing broadly global trends as far as diabetes is concerned, and also from your perspective, unmet needs for people with diabetes. So there aren't any right or wrong answers. It's a fantastic opportunity from our perspective to hear the views, the voice of multiple people who blog in this space from across the globe. It's quite a unique experience from our perspective, so we really do appreciate once again you guys taking that time to share your views, with us. As we mentioned, as I've mentioned in many emails, the session, everything you say is treated with the utmost confidence. As you're aware, we're being watched by a number of colleagues and also representatives from a range of medical device companies and also interested parties. So we'll be audio and video recording as well. And again, as you're aware, those who have been invited will be able to download a link of the session, but they'll not be using any of the insights or direct quotes from the session for any commercial benefit. We've made that clear, and I'll revisit that in a moment as well. As with all research, if anyone happens to mention an adverse event, as a market research company, we're required to report that. If that does happen, we'll contact you after the session. We'll basically ask you if you're willing to waive confidentiality in relation to that event, and we can take it from there. If you have a phone and it happens to be on, if you can put it on silent, that would be fantastic too. I'm nearly done talking at you, and it'd be great to hear from you too. I just thought it'd be nice to take a step back as well, and just to address those who are viewing remotely, and just firstly to acknowledge how kind you guys have been to agree to give us your time firstly, and also to remind all those who are observing remotely that they're through viewing remotely, everyone has kindly agreed not to use quotes, and to only use really insights they've heard from the session for internal purposes and not for commercial gain. And also, if anyone listening wishes to reach out to make contact with any of you guys who are taking part in a session but don't have a pre-existing relationship with you, then we're asking them to come via us so that we can then contact you for you to either say yes or no. So I think that's probably enough of me talking at you. Are you all okay to continue?
Yeah, I think.
Fantastic, great. Well, obviously it's the first time we're talking like this and actually seeing one another's faces, so I thought it'd be really nice just to start off with some classic introductions, really. Just really basic, so first name, maybe where you're from in terms of the country, and also just very briefly how long you've been blogging in this space, please. So if we could start with you, Stephen, please.
Hi, Stephen. I live in the United States on the East Coast, and I've been blogging for about 6.5 years.
Okay.
Not sure what else you'd like to know, but I'm happy to answer.
Great, okay. And I should have said as well, this is the only time I'll ask you to go around one at a time. After we've done the introductions, it's really an open floor, so feel free just to air your views. So thanks, Stephen. That's great for now. Grumpy.
Hi, I'm Grumpy. Real name's Chris, but no one uses it as well. I call me Grumps. Or Grumpy because my blog name is The Grumpy Pumper. I'm blogging for about five or 6 years, I think. I'd just like to congratulate Alper on his look. I'm giving you about 6, 7, 8 out of 10, but it's not bad, mate.
Thank you. I noticed we're kind of clashing. This wasn't pre-organised.
No, you're clashing. I'm not.
Thank you. Andrea.
Hi, everyone. So I'm, I guess, here representing France, although I'm Canadian originally. I've been living in France for 16 years. And I guess my blog has been around for about 4 years now, but hasn't been very active recently. I've been more involved recently in local advocacy issues and things like that rather than online, but as a long-time member of the Diabetes Online community.
Thank you, Andrea. Brenda.
Hi everybody, I'm Renza. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, where it is insanely early in the morning. And I've been blogging, I think, for about 6 years now, maybe 6 or 7 years for my own blog and also for blogs through the diabetes organisation that I work for.
Great. Thank you, Renza. And again, appreciate you waking up so ridiculously early to join us.
That's
Josephine.
fine. You owe me a lot of coffee, Alper.
It's on its way.
Good.
Hi, I'm Josephine, and I've been diabetic for 8.5 years, and I started to blog after 2 or 3 years after that. So I've been blogging on and off for 5 or 6 years because I wanted to do long distance sport and combine it with diabetes, and the knowledge of that is really hard to find. So I do bits and pieces. I'm doing half an Ironman on Saturday, so I try to tell people how I do it and encourage people to do it. People like Renza.
Right, okay, thank you, Josephine. Tin.
Hi, I'm Tina. I'm from Berlin, Germany, and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 5.5 years ago, and I started blogging just right after I got my diagnosis, so 5.5 years ago, yeah.
Great, okay. Lovely. Well, thank you. As I mentioned before, that's really the only time I'll ask you to go around one at a time. So from here on, just jump in as and when you wish. Before we move on, I thought it'd be really nice, just very briefly, to hear a bit more. Obviously, you're all coming from different markets, different countries, different perspectives, potentially. So it would be nice just to hear a bit more about the situation in your respective countries with regards to diabetes overall. So whether it's diabetes provision, care, types of devices that are available or soon to be available. So would you mind just, in your own time, just giving me a quick feel, a quick flavour as to what the situation is in your specific countries, please?
I think that sorry?
No, my mistake. Go ahead.
I think that Sweden is very, very fortunate. We get, kids get nearly whatever they want. Even adults type 1 get, I think, more or less whatever. A lot of people have Libre, or as I got Dexcom. Ever since we got different things, and it's been much easier to get things for the last 3 or 4 years. So,
right.
I mean, if I compare it to when...
No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
So if I compare it to, I mean, I've been on a training camp in Canberra in Australia. I've been on a training camp in Loughborough in the UK. And if I compare it to England and Australia and to the US, we are very, very lucky.
Right. Okay. How does that compare to the rest of you guys? No, go ahead, Josephine. There's a slight delay. Continue, please.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't work the same way here as it does in a lot of other countries. We got everything through state health insurance. So you don't have to be lucky to have a private insurance. You get it through national health care.
Okay. How does that compare with to your situation, Grumps?
Obviously in the UK, we've got the NHS, which is fantastic. So if you discount it, I mean, the things we pay for at the moment is CGM. If you can get pump funding, it's funded. Everything else is on prescription. So the financial impact to me from the day I got diagnosed nearly 24 years ago was nothing. Okay, if you exclude CGM, so you get diagnosed and it doesn't, whether you're an adult, a child, or you're a parent, it doesn't financially impact you. The only cost is the parking and the petrol going to the hospital, which is really good. The funding side for pumps and things like that varies, depends on CCG, as you know, Alper, we call it the postcode lottery. Depends where you live, depends on what access you may or may not get. And that has moved obviously with Libre, and they're becoming available on prescription as well. Not criticising the NHS. What it does do sometimes, it kind of limits our choice. So if I get a clinic and I get pump funding, which I did, at the time it didn't bother me. I had the choice of one pump. and that was, probably, I think it's kind of 8 years ago. Choice is a bit more, but it doesn't mean you can go out and get any pump. You might move, you move halfway across the country and probably get a different choice or more wider choice. Challenges on the NHS to find more money. From my point of view as an advocate, this challenge should also be on industry to reduce the price.
Right. Okay.
Like anything else, the cost only becomes an issue if it costs a lot of money.
Sure. A number of issues.
Yeah. So, but that's the way it goes. Everything says we're extremely lucky. So basically, if I want to change insulin, as long as my clinic are happy with it or happy, we have the conversation. There's no change in cost. If I lose some insulin, which I try not to do, if you accidentally smash one, you go get a prescription. The stress. It's not just a financial thing. You don't have that stress as well.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Brenda. How does that compare to Australia?
So we have a system here. So we have a Medicare system here, which means that all healthcare can be free and effectively is free. So if you want to have you can see all of your diabetes team through a diabetes clinic at a public hospital, and it's taxpayer funded. Or you can choose to see a team through privately at your own cost. When it comes to devices, so we have what's called the NDSS, National Diabetes Services Scheme. That's free for anybody diagnosed with diabetes to register for. Your doctor has to register you. And if you have type 1 diabetes, that gives you access to any needles, syringes, pen tips, insulin pump consumables, blood strips, all at a heavily subsidised price. And if you're under the age of 20, it also offers you, or 20 years and under, I should say, it offers you free CGM. Accessing an insulin pump is slightly different. We have a funded insulin pump program for children up to the age of 18, but above that, it's most people, I think about 85 or 90% of people get it through private health insurance, which is a voluntary contribution, and that can be, quite affordable through to, if you have top cover, quite expensive. When it comes to choice, we're really fortunate in that we pretty much get to choose. I've always chosen which pump it is that I'm using. I fully fund CGM myself, and I choose that myself. And the same with blood glucose strips. It's really very, very simple to just change and use whatever you want. Once you're registered on the NDSS, you don't need to get an ongoing prescription. You just need to go up to a pharmacy to order. Insulin through a different system again called the PBS, the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme. A prescription of insulin, for me it's 5 10 ml vials of whatever it is that I'm using, and that's about $38, $39 now. If you're low income and have a healthcare card, it's under $6. That's the same for everybody. It doesn't change depending on where you live. So it's affordable. It's not completely free or taxpayer funded. It is, there are subsidies available to people. We're very proud of our NDSS. It's been going for 30 years now.
Okay, thank you, Rinza. Stephen, how does that compare to the US?
Well, I'm very envious of everyone in the UK and Australia, but in the US, we do not have a right to health care necessarily. So we do have the ability to purchase health care due to legislation that's been passed in the last 10 years or so. And that kind of ebbs and flows depending on the political climate, how difficult that is. But each plan that anyone might have, whether it's through their employer or it's through a public exchange, plan has a different way of covering things, and they may or may not cover particular devices or drugs or whatever. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of various things, and so it can be very difficult. Even good plan, I have what I think is a very good plan through my employer, but even so, my out-of-pocket that I pay for co-pays to doctors or for drugs or device supplies, that probably costs me in the neighborhood of a little over $4,000 US per year.
So Stephen, in the US, as far as just briefly in terms of available devices, including CGM pump, etc., what's the current situation? What does the landscape look like in terms of the types of devices that are available?
Well, from my perspective, I think it looks pretty good. We're still seeing a lot of instances where things will get approved either through the EU or elsewhere before they might get approved in the United States. There's a regulatory agency here in the U.S. called the Food and Drug Administration. They have made tremendous strides in the past, well, since I've been blogging anyway, in terms of getting the patient involved in, the patient voice particularly involved in their decision-making process, and they want to hear what devices are interesting to people and what is important to them to get approved, and then they work with manufacturers also to try and develop some framework to say, for instance, if you want to get X, Y, or Z approved, then you follow these steps, and they spell that out a little bit better probably than they did previously. So in that regard, even though we're still getting some things approved after people in other parts of the world do, I think that whole process is improving a great deal.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Stephen, is there a difference between different states in America?
Not necessarily. There is with regard to some of the laws concerning insurance and what insurance might or might not cover in some cases. But in terms of regulatory things, specifically devices like CGMs or insulin pumps, those are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration and to a certain degree, I suspect, by the Federal Trade Commission. But that would not necessarily have to do with whether it's good for a patient or not. That would have to do with commerce.
Okay, Tim, just to hear from, just quick introductions from Andrew and Tinny, please.
Yeah, in France, it's quite, like a lot of other European countries, we have a very good public social security system where everything is provided free of cost at point of sale, if you're to call it like that. So there's no money that changes hands in terms of getting access to insulin, test strips, glucose meters, pumps. All of that is covered 100% down to the AA batteries in your insulin pump. But where it becomes more complicated is newer technology. So the Freestyle Libre has been reimbursed now for a year, and that's for sort of anybody type 1 or type 2 who is taking multiple daily injections or on a pump. And just in the past couple of months, both the Enlight and the Dexcom have become sort of partially funded in much more constrained circumstances. So HbA1c over 8 or major hypo needing medical assistance within the past year. So getting access to some of the newer technologies takes a lot of time because unlike the UK where it sort of depends where you live, in France one of the objectives is that it's really sort of a national coverage and everybody has access to the same things at the same time. But to get there, takes a lot of negotiation.
Okay, thank you. Tina?
Yeah, I kind of see Germany there as well. So we have the public health insurance and everything is basically provided. We can just go to our doctors, get the piece of paper and just go to the next pharmacy or order everything online even. But yeah, same with Germany in terms of newer technology. It takes time to get reimbursed. Especially with the CGM, it took a lot of time to really, like, you could get it reimbursed before, but then it was like a really special kind of situation. Otherwise, you wouldn't really get it, which has changed now, finally, which we're really happy about, but still, you need to kind of be like a fitting patient for it to get it reimbursed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, thanks, guys. That's really, I know it's very much a whistle-stop tour as far as introductions are concerned, but from here on, just jump in as you wish. I thought it'd be nice just to begin, just from my perspective, to understand a bit more about your, I guess, your role, your identity as people who blog in the diabetes space. So, how would you describe your role as someone who blogs in this whole area? What is it you do? What's your purpose in your mind?
From my point of view, I just tell my story. That's it. I blog to tell my story. I don't have a specific purpose. If I'd set up my blog for a specific purpose to do anything, I think I'd have set up for the wrong reasons personally. And in telling my story, some people read it and they think it's funny, or they think that there's something they can relate to, or some people probably think I'm a complete idiot, which is fine. You know, people can take away what they want from it. That's what it's there for.
Okay. How does that compare to the rest of you, Renzo? How does that compare to your, I guess, your role? Why it is you blog in this space?
Well, I guess I started blogging because I wanted to connect with people. I mean, people asked me why I blogged. It was really, really selfish. I didn't do it. I don't think my story is particularly interesting, and I don't think that anything that I have to say about diabetes hasn't been before or hasn't been shared before. I really just wanted to connect with other people who were living similar diabetes lives to me, I guess. And, you know, I very much, you know, there's a very strong, frequent disclaimer on my blogs that this is my story, it's mine alone. Don't do anything that I do. And I also think that it's really important to acknowledge the privilege bubble that I'm very clearly living in, as is everybody that I'm looking at right now, because I certainly don't think that my diabetes story is typical in Australia even, but certainly around the world. So I think that part of, I guess I feel a great responsibility that that people are aware of that it's not typical.
Sure. Okay. How about the rest of you? How does that compare to your, whether it's a role or motivation? How does that compare, Tina, Andrea, Stephen?
I actually came quite late to the game in terms of blogging. I read lots of blogs for years, but I think I came, I don't know, maybe very early to the game in terms of the diabetes online community, because I was diagnosed in '97 when there was an internet. Although there wasn't a lot of information about diabetes on the internet, but I connected with people very, very early on. So I never had the sort of aha moment of my first, like, oh my goodness, I've been living with diabetes for 20 years and I've never met another person who's living with this. I sort of got over that very early on after my diagnosis. And so I was using forums and listservs at the beginning that then gradually changed into Facebook groups and reading blogs and Twitter and things like that. And when I started my blog, it was really to, what Chris and Renza said, to put my story a little bit out there. Sort of writing was partially therapeutic. It was sort of writing about what I was living, and if I know that I had been helped by reading other people's stories, and it had helped me get through some diabetes burnout and things like that. And I thought if other people could relate to what I've been through, then it's interesting to have a platform that's a little bit more public than Facebook groups or forums in the more traditional sense of the word.
Yeah. What I mean, to all of you, especially I'm conscious of Stephen, Andrea, Tina, what, if any, contact or communication do you have with bloggers outside of, I guess, the diabetes space? What, if any, contact do you have with others?
Oh, well, you know, for me, I'm lucky. I have a lot of contact with people who are outside of the diabetes space. Sorry, you were without contact with other bloggers. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of contact with other diabetes bloggers, but that's kind of happened through the years. So very, very infrequent in the first year or two. And then since then, it's kind of grown as I've gotten involved in other projects that not necessarily related to blogging, but that I could talk about on my blog.
Okay, how about for the rest of you? What, if any, contact you have with bloggers outside of the diabetes space? Maybe bloggers who are blogging about other conditions, other issues, for example. If any.
I've had some for sure. There aren't a lot of diabetes bloggers in France. I've been trying to keep a sort of running tally, and I've found about 20 over the last 5 years, but some that are no longer active and some that are brand new, and not all who blog about diabetes all the time. And but I've met much more active sort of e-patients and bloggers in other disease communities in France, whereas all of my sort of online connections have been specifically diabetes.
Sure. I guess potentially there are a range of different audiences that you're linking with in whatever form. Where medical device manufacturers are concerned, what if any contact do you tend to have with that type of audience?
Well, I think.
Come again, please. Once again, what do you mean, Alper?
So,
can you repeat the question?
Sure, of course. As far as medical device manufacturers are concerned, what's the nature of the contact, the communication, the relationship you have with them?
From my experience, it's been different. So some of them want sort of to lead me into a path of what I should write, and some of them say, do what you want.
So when you say do what you want, what are you actually talking about here? How are you liaising or even linking or working with them? What's the purpose?
Say that I'm trying. I remember a few years ago I did a cross-country ski race, which was 90 kilometers, and I was testing a certain device for that race. And the supplier wanted me to email them before I blogged it, which I did because I wanted to do it for good and for bad. And they didn't because they wanted me to control my words.
Okay. How about for the rest of you, Renzo? I mean, for you, how would you describe how you link with medical device manufacturers? What is it you're doing or maybe not doing with or for? What type of relationship?
I am very transparent on my blog. Firstly, there is no cash comment on my blog at all. I don't do sponsored posts, despite being asked frequently to do that. I won't do that. I do write about products that I'm using, and I'm very clear if that product has been given to me. So just as an example, I have done some talks for a CGM company, and they paid me with product, and I was very clear about that. I also attend events and at times facilitate events that are run by device companies. And again, I often write about them because I write about what was discussed at the event. It's all, other people like me and what we're sharing, but very clearly state that, who's funded me to be there, how, what was funded, accommodation, travel, etc. And, standard disclaimer, they paid for my time, but certainly not my words. Really, they don't want to be paying for my words because I don't, I'm apart from the fact that I'm, only ever going to be honest, I'm also really sweary. So quite frankly, they probably don't want to be associated with what I'm like.
So when you're provided with products to kind of run with and maybe a review and write about, at what stage in that developmental life cycle are you handed the products? How is it you fit in?
Often at launch, so really before that, which is a great shame actually. And I think that there's not enough of that engagement of getting us to have a look at and test devices before they go to market. And I actually get incredibly frustrated, and it's not just with devices, it's with anything, it's with advertising campaigns and anything where I'm handed something and said, oh, we want to know what you think about it. We're about to press print, or we're in production. It's too late. Like, don't ask me.
hold that thought for one moment, Renza. So, Tina, you're nodding your head. How do you feel about what Renza's just said there?
Yeah, because I really agree to what Renza said, but I feel like some companies are really coming in fairly late to the party and being like, oh, here's our product, it's finished, or here's our campaign, it's finished, and then you have a look at it and you realize that no person with diabetes was part of the campaign or part of the product development, and you can really you can see a difference between a product where people with diabetes were involved or not. And I think it's really
but so it even goes sometimes the product isn't fully developed with the person with diabetes involved, especially software is often developed for the healthcare professional that they think is going to see the data. And to the point I've even had conversations where I said something about the online software and I was told it wasn't for people with diabetes.
Right. I mean, this whole...
Sorry, that's because in the UK, healthcare professionals or hospitals will pay money to use it and we use it for free. So it would rather be... I get the commercial thing, but that's no good to me.
Yeah. Sure. This whole desire maybe for medical device manufacturers to come to you earlier in that product development life cycle, whether it's regarding the product itself, whether that product is a pump, CGM, etc., or whether it has more to do with marketing materials. It may sound like a daft question, but what would be the benefit in them maybe working with you or liaising with you or presenting it to you earlier on? Why?
I don't think that's the right question.
I've had the...
Sorry.
Okay.
I'll be very brief. But it really, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. If you come to me and ask me my opinion on something, you only get my opinion because my diabetes and the way I manage it is mine, and it's personal to me. And the way I do it, the way I do it, and the way I have to do it, and the way I want to do it is different to everyone else on the screen.
Okay.
So to come to a few people isn't good enough. It's more a case of if you're going to come to people with diabetes, in my opinion, how do you go to as many people as possible and then design a product that hits the needs of the majority, not a few people?
Right. So, Renza, your earlier comment, just so I'm clear, are you saying that they should be coming to bloggers initially, or are you saying that they should be reaching out to people with diabetes overall earlier on in that developmental life cycle?
Yeah, I'm just letting you know that my landline's about to die. I'm trying to get on from my mobile, so somebody might want to accept this call so that I can not die.
Right. Okay. No, thanks, guys. Well.
I think that, I'm a very big believer in co-design, and co-design means, all parties being part of things very, very early on, from the development stage right through to the delivery stage. And I think that, and it's not just bloggers, I think we need to be really clear about that. It's not that we already have a voice, and we do that. So I think that it's really, really important that, that, and I think it's a responsibility for device companies to really make more of an effort to work with people like us. It's not hard to find. I mean, Alper, you put together this event. It wasn't really all that hard to find. We're out there.
Sure. So, I mean, for the rest of you, Stephen, Andrea, Tina, what kind of benefit or strength do you see with you guys liaising with medical device manufacturers? What's the benefit? What's the strength there, in your opinion?
Well,
I definitely agree with...
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Stephen. Okay. I definitely agree with what the others have said, that it needs, even from the sort of the idea, the basic need that we're trying to address needs to come from the community rather than come from the device maker. We all know that that's sort of in an ideal world, and that's not always how it's going to happen. And so the earliest you can get patients on board, the better. And the more patients, or the more variety of patients, not just the super engaged ones, not just the people who are going to use the devices with all of their functions, but the people who are going to use just the basic functions and who are just just sort of the basic users. I've had contact with different companies who have, I guess, contacted patients at different levels, and it's interesting to see the difference in this final product when patients have been involved earlier, including features of an insulin pump that wasn't yet out on the market that the group that I'm in with Tina, that the group made some comments and features were added to the pump before it was put out on the market. Whereas other products, you sort of get brought in just before the launch to make a bit of buzz about it, and it doesn't really matter if you like the product or not, or if it's the right product or the most useful product. It's just about making the buzz. And so it's always much more interesting if you've got the people, the users, the end users involved in the initial stages of planning and development, so that you can actually address the needs of those people who are going to be using it.
Are there, I mean, is it that, so correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is that there isn't enough dialogue earlier on in that developmental life cycle between manufacturers and people with diabetes? Is it just that there isn't enough contact and dialogue with people overall within that population, or are there certain segments within that population of people with diabetes that maybe aren't being included enough or at all in that earlier conversation?
I feel like a lot of companies are afraid of actually talking to patients and hearing their opinions about their early stage products. And I think this is really, like, they need to be braver, because this is a problem. Because if you just show us the finished product, and as I said, it seems like no one really with diabetes or like knowledge about diabetes, kind of, you know what I mean, like the experience worked on it. We see that, and then it's too late. Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Andrea? How does that compare to your thoughts there?
Yeah, I completely agree that it really makes a difference when people are involved at the beginning and can work on the actual issues that need addressing. You know, a lot of products today, if we compare insulin pumps, they all have the same basic features, and so everybody can put them into place in a slightly different way, but they're not necessarily addressing sort of the fine-tuning details that people are looking for in their insulin pump use.
So what, I mean, just to run with that, for example, and this is to all of you, so in terms of those fine details or fine-tuning of insulin pumps, for example, what is it you think that's missing that maybe wouldn't be missed if manufacturers were engaging more with people with diabetes earlier on?
For me personally, it's the ability to fit it to my needs. I was a long-time user of the Cosmo pump that was taken off the market in 2009, and anyone who's used that pump knows that it was very personalizable. If there were features that I wanted on the menu, I added them to the menu. If I wasn't going to use them, I took them off the menu, and I could change things really to my needs. Make the pump very simple if I only wanted to use the basic features, or make it more complicated. I think regulatory measures have changed a lot in the last 10 years, and so there are certain things that companies aren't allowed to, they're not in terms of, like, the regulatory bodies won't approve anymore in terms of some of those personalizable features. But it's really important for the user to be able to use a product that's adapted to his or her needs.
So in terms of you guys keeping track of the kind of updates, latest developments within the entire area of diabetes, how do you keep abreast of what's happening, what's up and coming?
So I will tell you that there are a couple of things from my perspective. So there are, I have a couple of contacts here or there at device makers. They're not people who are really on the inside. They're more, they're not involved in development, device development or anything like that. So I may ask them about something, and I also, I'm fortunate enough, I live in Baltimore, which is about 30 or 40 miles from the nation's capital in Washington, and that allows me to go to sometimes some public workshops that are designed around various things, including diabetes technology.
Right.
And also there are a couple of places around here where clinical trials take place, so I've been able to participate in clinical trials as well. So I am able to three different things to kind of go on. And I will also say, to kind of jump on the end of what was just previously discussed, is that there are a lot of dynamics here in my country surrounding what you can talk about and when you can talk about it. So if something is in the review process with the regulatory agencies, then I don't know and I don't know all of the legal mumbo-jumbo with that, but essentially there's a lot that companies can't talk about and cannot ask us to talk about until it's approved. I suspect that there may be a few things that they could talk to us about, that we could talk about, but they may be a little afraid to do so for legal reasons. I would see it as I'd like to see companies partner with patients and then go to the regulatory agency and say, we want to get these people involved in this development, and find a way to do that between the three different partners.
Right. Grumps, how about for you? What for you your key? How do you keep abreast of developments and progression in this area?
From my point of view, mentioned earlier, it's my privilege of the things I get to do and the people I know. So it's the people I know within the community and the relationships that I've got and I've built with device companies. That's for new stuff. I think if you take that kind of the really lucky point, I'm very fortunate. I think in general, if you're on social media, you're on Twitter, you're within the online community, then you get plenty of things out there that are tweeted out. People like us get to see products, and they might put pictures out, they might put reviews out. Charities, people like Input, Diabetes Mind, Diatribe in the US, a lot of information comes out of there. If you then take it down to another level, if you're just online, but you're not involved in the community, you might see things, you might go on a charity website, you might find new stuff there. If you're not online and you're not doing it that way, the only way you'll find out about new products, not new developments, actually a new meter or a new CGM that comes out, will probably be from your healthcare professionals. And to be honest, they may not be as up to speed. So it all depends on, the more you go looking, then you might go and find it. But if you don't go looking, you're not likely to see it.
Well, okay, thank you. Josephine, for you, how do you keep up to date with new developments?
I would say the same thing as Grumpy do. It's whatever other Facebook groups, whatever bloggers write about, and once I hear about something, I might contact to get more knowledge. As Grumpy says, the healthcare center is probably the last institution to tell me about the new device.
So if you think back, if you reflect on the last 5 years, what for you have been the most significant or even the most exciting developments in the area of diabetes? Renzo, what are your thoughts? The last kind of 5 years for you, what have been the most exciting, significant developments?
All the off-label stuff.
Okay, tell me more.
I think that the whole DIY APS movement is probably the most exciting thing that's happening in diabetes at the moment. And, there's a reason that the hashtag is We Are Not Waiting. I hate to be simplistic about it, but an insulin pump just delivers insulin, and a continuous glucose monitor just monitors my glucose, and a new blood glucose machine just monitors my blood glucose. Libre, I guess, has been, something new because it's been a different way of monitoring, so that certainly has been something new. But in terms of automation in a way that works for people, well, when I say people, I say me, because I only am ever speaking to myself. The only things that have got me excited is what's going on in the DIY world.
Okay, we'll talk more about that as well. Andrea, for you, the same question, thinking about the last 5 years, what for you have been the most significant, exciting developments?
I agree 100% with what Renzo just said. There have been new products, new glucose meters, new pumps, new CGMs or upgraded CGMs that have come out. I think the DIY movement has really shaken things up and forced other products to sort of rethink the way they're doing things and maybe speed up some of their processes. But as exciting as it is, it's also super frustrating to not necessarily have access to any of those new developments that are coming out, including DIY, just because of being able to afford or connect with the right types of products to be able to use to build your own loop system, etc.
How, I mean, this goes out to all of you. How prominent is that DIY open movement across your individual market?
I would say it's very prominent among the people who know about it. So like what Grumps was saying,
yeah.
If you know about it, if you're connected, then you know about it, and you are either very interested in it or you are involved in it. There are whole DIY APS groups in my area who are working on it, you know, themselves and helping each other get started and maintain their systems. But it's a small group of people because there aren't enough people who know about it.
Okay, Grumps, what are your thoughts on the I guess on the most exciting developments? Do you agree, or is there anything additional to the DIY movement?
I only caught part of the question because I got cut out. My view of it is, if it works for people, great. I'm always very cautious of that kind of thing. Not because I used to be a techie, and I used to be an IT manager for big companies that were not scared of technology. For me, it's always about, it's getting better, especially when it first came out. My worry was around the accessibility and availability of the kit, because it was out of warranty kit and it was hard to get hold of. Therefore, whatever fails, that goes to my really boring real life as a business continuity manager. So it's more around, if you get on this stuff and people love it, or kids are using it and they love it and have become very reliant on it, okay, what's that psychological effect? If it fails for no reason, no fault of your own, then you can't get that particular pump, and it just doesn't go there. I can bore everyone for years on this, but even down to supply chain, we've seen supply chain issues this year in certain things, and we can't guarantee it. You have hurricanes, you have lots of other things that give you reasons, and we rely on this stuff. So, I'm very cautious about it. I think it's great if you can get it working. I think the people who have got it working can be their own. They can fix it if it doesn't work. So the question is, the people that are less tech savvy on it, do they get left high and dry? So it's not. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I always come up with caution.
Yeah, I mean, some of which you've touched upon already, but maybe just to think more about any issues or even challenges or difficulties you associate with this whole DIY movement. Andrea, Tina, what if any challenges or issues, potential issues you associate with the DIY movement, if any?
I think challenges, you said challenges, the challenge is for the company to see it, to acknowledge it, and then to make themselves work even harder and faster on similar products, and also to broaden the knowledge of the people with diabetes in terms of the product, because just going back really quick to one of your questions earlier, I think that the minority of people is online, is in contact with companies, is as privileged as we are, and knows even about CGM or the DIY movement. And I think this is one of the challenges or issues that comes with it.
Josephine, how do you feel about the DIY movement in terms of positives or potential concerns or issues?
It's a bit hard to tell. But I mainly agree with Tina there. I think it's sort of the same, works the same way for us here.
In what sense? Can you elaborate?
In that way that to broaden the things, it has to be more a bigger community to understand the thing.
Mm-hmm. From your perspective, how are healthcare professionals perceiving or even engaging with the DIY movement that you've all just mentioned? What's their take on it?
Some are good, some are not so good.
Okay, so the good and the not so good, what does that look like?
I mean, to me, there are 2 or 3 doctors in Sweden who can help me with my diabetes on the level I do sport and train. I mean, my doctor asked me when I was going to do an Ironman. He said, I told him what I was going to do. I said swimming, cycling and running. And he said, how many weeks do you got to do that in? And I said, no, it should be done in a day. So that explains a bit how far away we were from each other.
Okay, but I guess I'm thinking more specifically about how doctors, endocrinologists, nurses, etc., and nutritionists, how they maybe engage with the whole or feel about the whole DIY movement.
I've heard many things. I've heard everything on that. So I've heard people's experiences who say, my endocrinologist was really impressed and they love this idea, and I've heard my endocrinologist dropped me as a patient because I'm using this. So I've heard it, just like it is with everything else, opinions vary from person to person.
Mm-hmm. Grumps, what's your take on how healthcare professionals are engaging with the DIY movement?
I can only go from what I've seen because I don't do it myself and I haven't had any conversations. So some of the clinicians that are online are really engaged with it and are trying to understand it. Some are just absolutely terrified by it. But you can't take the scenario. Some people, some clinicians, and the same as when we started, self-funded CGM and things like that. The first time they even hear about this is when someone turns up in front of them and says, "Oh look, I built this thing and it's really great and I love it." And that doesn't often start off a good conversation because they're on the back foot and they don't even understand it. Therefore, they're frightened of it. So, as someone said, it's all about getting. If it's going to be out there, and it is, whether you like it or not, they've got to support the person. They've got to support the person with diabetes. If you've got someone who's omitting injections, they don't send them away just because they're not doing what they're told. This is a similar thing. You have to support the person. But yeah, you can imagine if you're sitting there and you see all these people and they come into the pub that you gave them, and they come into the CGM that you funded or that you've helped them to use, and suddenly they've covered it all together, and it's regulating their own insulin for it. You're gonna take a back step, and kind of be concerned.
Mm-hmm. So, Renz, I mean, in Australia,
we said a little bit.
No, please go ahead.
We said a little bit earlier about patients not being very aware. There are whatever small percentage of very engaged patients who are really thrilled about this movement, but probably the majority have never heard of it or know very, very little about it. I think it's even worse in the medical community. There have been a few published studies in medical journals now about DIY, but they're few and far between. They're not necessarily translated into other languages, and so even with CGM 5 years ago when I went to my endo and said I'm interested in using a CGM and seeing what it could do for my diabetes management, her answer to me was it's too expensive. But it's not the question.
Okay. So in terms of more people, both healthcare professionals and people with diabetes learning more, hearing more about the DIY movement, what's the best way forward there? What needs to happen?
Well, I think as a wider question, is the same issue we always have. We've got the online community, which has got a lot of people in it, but it's a really, really small segment of the diabetes community. So it's not just DIY. How do you talk? How do you contact the people you don't know about? How do you get the message out there to the people that are online? We have it for anything at all. So I don't know the answer, but it shouldn't be. If we're going to find an answer to that question, it shouldn't be just with DIY. It should be about absolutely, in my opinion, everything, absolutely everything.
Okay, but are there any kind of initial steps you think that need to be made to to broaden understanding among people with diabetes about new technology, the type of information support that's out there. Renza, what are your thoughts?
Well, there was just a session at ADA, there was a symposium at ADA last month that was a really great way of, I guess, informing the health professionals who were at the conference. And at the Australasian Diabetes Congress that's coming up next month, there's also a symposium about DIY stuff. So I think that in terms of getting information to health professionals, it's going direct to the source, which is, at conferences, through journals, and people like Dana Lewis are doing an absolutely stellar job in making this more mainstream. But I think it's also about speaking to health professionals in a language that they understand. And I gave a talk on my experience looping in October last year. It was very new to me. I think it had been like a couple of months. And I do a lot of public speaking, and I'm a very comfortable public speaker, and I walked out of that session traumatized. It was just really very not well received. And I know that a number of the people in the room, in fact, the majority of them, it was the first time that they had heard about it, and they were horrified, absolutely outraged. And I guess that I've had to work out how to talk about it in a language that health professionals are going to be more open to. So whereas I talk about the benefits for me, they want to know about A1C. They want to know about A1C. They want to know about A1C. I couldn't care less about A1C. I want to know about how it's making me feel. But health professionals love to hear about that. But also I think framing it in a way that reminds them, and I think this has already been picked up, that, and this is not in any way health professional bashing, but it is just, an important point to remember, is that health professionals are very risk averse, and that's great in a lot of ways. But it's also meant that when it's come to technology, there is a real reluctance to, new technologies are seen as, they're quite suspicious about it. And that goes back to when home blood glucose meters were first released. Health professionals called it a dangerous practice. We don't need those. People can wee on sticks. That's what they've been doing for years. And, I had a similar experience as Andrea with CGM, where I had to go and find a health professional. Actually, I think I just showed up and I was using it, but I had to doctor shop to find one who would fill out a form to say that I could start on an insulin pump 17 years ago. So I think it's a matter of time, bringing people along for the ride.
Sure. So in order to better inform people with diabetes about new technology and support that's available, what, if anything, or anything else can manufacturers do or do differently? What needs to change?
I mean, one problem is that some people sort of they are simply not interested because they think, oh, I got diabetes, for me, blah blah blah, and they don't even want to look at the opportunities and how much you can improve your life by medical devices. And I think that one of the hardest questions is how the medical device company are going to attract them. That's one category of people. The other category of people is the people, especially parents, I would say, who are just complaining the whole time about, oh my God, my kid had this level and the meter says this. Why is there a difference? And they go crazy on the technology instead of looking back only 5 or 10 years ago. We didn't have this technology at all.
Okay, Grumps, what are your thoughts there? Just in terms of what, if any, role medical device manufacturers can play to kind of making people with diabetes more aware about the kind of technology provision that's out there?
I think, again, when we talk around these things, we always think about online. It's okay. If you take Snow in the UK, my clinic, a lot of the people aren't online. A lot of people aren't engaged in the community. The clinicians only ever will find out about new technologies from the device companies. So the people with diabetes are reliant on doing this. And it's not a case of them not being interested. It's not a case of them complaining about things. It's a case of they just want to get on with their life. or they just want their kids to be kids and go to school and have fun. So, yeah, going out there, hunting down, looking for everything technology is something we do because it's something we're interested in. Some people just want the kit, so they want to go to a clinic and they want to be told about everything and they want to be given an option. They want to get the right information and make an informed choice. How you do that in the UK, I don't know, because we haven't got enough companies, we haven't got enough reps. No disrespect to the companies, they're not going to go and sell someone else's products. They're only going to be interested in their own. So it's looking. I think you've got to look at what the touch points are now and how you utilise the way it works and how you leverage that. Because if we try and reinvent the wheel, you're not going to get anywhere.
So beyond, some of the things you touched upon there, Grumps, in terms of having enough reps, etc. For you and the rest of you guys, what more could be done or changed or done differently to maybe better inform people with diabetes or parents of children with diabetes about the type of provision and devices that are out there?
So I will say that I think what I see from manufacturers pretty much is, we've all talked a little bit about privilege and how lucky we are to be part of a community that gets notified in a lot of ways prior to a lot of other people about these kind of things. And I think of that in a lot of ways. To use probably an American phrase, sorry, but I almost feel like they're going after low-hanging fruit all the time. They're finding people who are in the community who can communicate to others, and then they're trying to get all of us involved, and they're trying to get doctors involved so that they can go and let their patients. There's a huge, in my country, a huge unmet need where people either don't know or because of cost don't have access to devices. And if a manufacturer is able to meet that unmet need, then I got to think that would be amazingly successful for them. But it just...
Okay. But Stephen, I guess beyond cost, how could that be achieved in terms of making people aware, spreading the word, informing?
That's a good question. I almost think that I personally question, am I doing enough to tell people about these things? But I'm not sure I know the answer to that other than to say there are whole communities where people see a doctor once a year or maybe only see a doctor when they go to the emergency room. And how do we let those people know? I'm working on a program through my state right now where we're trying to find a way to reach those populations. And it's a work in progress. It is definitely a work in progress.
Renza, how do you feel? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, this is the recurring theme with everything. It's not just the device companies. It's their information provision. It's the education and services. It's everything. I think it's the million-dollar question is how do we reach the people that we're not reaching? And, I think a lot of us, even if there are people who can't afford it, if you're engaged in this community, you will be it's most likely that you will know about it. It's actually not the people who we're already engaging with. And I think that, a lot of that needs to come back down to, I think that there is more opportunity to use peer learning and peer support opportunities. And that's not all online peer support. Obviously, there's a lot of that. People are still using face-to-face. In some communities, there's really a very strong, the way things work is that, older people in the community share information. So, I think it's a matter of not just using 21st century marketing techniques, because whilst they're really relevant to us, and I absolutely think that device companies should be talking to people like us, but they need to find a way to talk to people who are not quite as well connected. And I think that there is usually just a very one-dimensional way of doing things, and that can come down to time, or it can come down to what a PR company is saying this is the best way to do it. And the thing is that when
when companies take the time to be bothered to do market research, they're talking to people like us 90% of the time, 95, 99% of the time. They're getting a very skewed perspective.
So I mean, this I guess this very clearly links back to one of the issues that you guys raised early on, just in terms of medical device manufacturers designing, whether it's a medical device or marketing material, without having maybe, in your view, fully connected with its target audience or its customer base. So what can they do differently then?
Maybe they
I don't know if I have a direct answer to that question, but I agree with what Renzo was just saying. I think there's such a huge gap in terms of just basic patient education needs that a lot of the medical professionals are, rightfully so, concentrating more on that and making sure that people have access to the education that they need just to be able to live well with their diabetes, and then going on to more technical aspects of that, including using pumps or CGMs, or hopefully the next steps will be integrated systems that will be more widely available. It's so far from the basic need of most people that it's not necessarily the what's sort of right on the table. And in France anyway, and I think France probably has some of the strictest laws out of any of the countries that are represented here anyway, medical device companies aren't allowed to talk to patients. And so there are loopholes in these laws, and so it's not that I don't have any contact with them whatsoever, but it's certainly not specifically about reimbursed products. And so when the Libre first came out on the market, there were ads on television, and there was lots of sort of buzz on the news and everything about it. Since it's been reimbursed, it's complete silence. The only way you're supposed to be able to get information about these types of devices is through your healthcare professional. And healthcare professionals don't necessarily have all the information. And even the training that people are supposed to get to be able to have these devices reimbursed, the training isn't there because there just isn't. There are too many people who need it, and not enough people to be able to manage all that training. Sure.
So I guess if you look to the near and distant future, knowing the diabetes space as you guys do, having blogged and lived with for various amounts of time, in your personal opinion, which products or devices, services do you think medical device manufacturers should be focusing their efforts and essentially their money on most? What should the focus be developmentally here on?
But for me, focus should be on interoperability. So I get why everything is so proprietary and why you can only connect your meter to this thing and your CGM to that thing. But in an ideal world, if I can have a remotely controlled pump and a CGM that talks to it, I want to go and pick which pump I have, which CGM I have. Because some don't work on me. Some don't work very well, some give me hideous rash, some just read low. So I want to go and pick the best CGM to go with the pump that fits my needs and the meter that works best for me, whether it's because it's small enough and carry it or whether it just does the right thing. So there's interoperability of that and things that can be updated. So Andrea said features that we put all the features there, just we can select the ones we want. So I want different ones for different people. And then I don't want a 4-year warranty. I want a 4-year warranty because it's reliability, but I don't want a 4-year warranty that restricts my access to my increase of technology, because technology moves in more than 4-year steps. So make it that can be updatable. Go and learn from the mobile phone companies and things and that, and the way they do things. But yeah, for me, interoperability. You want to be able to pick. You don't want to get a pump, and that restricts you to which CGM you can use. Not just manufacturer, but which generation of it as well.
So when you say interoperability, and this is to you and others, are you thinking solely about pump and CGM, or does interoperability apply to devices beyond that?
Algorithm.
Everything. Smart insulin pens. Most people in the diabetes community in the UK use a blood glucose meter and do MDI, a pen. That's by far the majority. Pump users, I can't remember what they are, something like 10% of that. So there's a hell of a lot of people don't. So look at all the technology gains we've made in the stuff that us privileged people get, and then do some backward compatibility. Go and apply that to other things. Make the pens more accurate. Half unit pen's great, but I know there are limitations. But could you make a quarter unit pen? Would it be useful? Do people want it? Go and find out. So take those technologies that we keep developing forward, not that MDI is a backward step. Some people don't have a pump because they don't want one, and they never will. So actually look at the bigger picture, not just the things that you're developing.
Sure. Renza, how do you feel? Just looking ahead, what products, services, devices do you think manufacturers should be focusing on developing most?
Yeah, I think that it does come down to interoperability. I think that we're in a position now where people are starting to get a little bit frustrated at the idea that we are being dictated to with what devices can talk to each other. And that's been really very, we're seeing changes in that. We're seeing that, more and more companies are now talking about not locking in with, pump companies not locking in with one CGM supplier. And, I think that's really important. There's no one size fits all. And not only is there no one size fits all, we want to change. We want to be able to change ourselves from using product A to product B sometimes because it just fits better with what's going on at that moment in our life. And I think also it comes down to having a look at what the education model is because that needs to change. I can't remember who said that there are simply not enough health professionals around to educate the way that it's required. So in Australia, if you want to get an insulin pump covered by your private health insurance, that you need to be admitted as an inpatient in a hospital. Now that can be a day procedure, but why does that need to happen? It's because that's the way it's always been. But that's an absolutely ridiculous way for it to be. I think the device companies need to step up when it comes to education and look at how their workforce can be better involved in that and properly. And I say that with some caution as somebody who, when I started using a pump 17 and a half years ago, I had a device company rep train me as I was sitting as an inpatient in a hospital, and it took until I actually met a qualified pump trainer to learn actually what I was doing rather than just pressing buttons. Right. So, a properly resourced, and an informed workforce getting information out there. And also looking at how, peers can be included in that because I think that, I still maintain the things that I have learnt that have been the most useful in anything to do with my diabetes, I have learnt from other people with diabetes.
Sure. So beyond, other than training, you mentioned interoperability. I mean, for you guys, Josephine, Andrea, Tina, Stephen, in what other areas would you hope medical device manufacturers would focus?
Well, I think, I totally agree with interoperability. And not only with regard to the medical devices, but also with regard to things like, being able to use my mobile device to read the numbers of my CGM. Allowing my healthcare professional to be able to download the data in their office. All of those kind of things. So there's a very big picture in terms of interoperability, and that's happening in the healthcare space in general. Even outside of diabetes. So that's a big deal. I totally agree with what Renza said about making sure that we get patients involved in helping people get at least educated and comfortable using devices. I think too often we're used to try and tout new devices that are reaching the market, but we're not being involved in actually helping people to get comfortable with making it a part of their daily lives.
How about for you guys, Andrea and Tina? What are your thoughts?
I think I just want to add something really quick. I think that over everything we all said, because I agree with, almost everything that was said to this now, but I think that it is super important to not forget that you're developing something not just for people with diabetes, but for people. Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to add that.
But when you say not forget, what does not forget mean? What does that look like?
I feel like a lot of products or like information for people with diabetes is putting us in a place where it's like we don't have any outside life outside of like the life with diabetes, and there's just so much more going on in all of our lives. Like we have jobs, we have just the daily life, or other, even other disabilities maybe, or other like things that have something that do something in our daily lives. And it is super important to not forget that, because if you reduce the people to just having diabetes, you can't really make products that are working in the daily life of the people with diabetes. Yeah.
So what, I mean, let's take CGM for a moment then. For it to fully reflect and cater for the lives, the true and real lives of people with diabetes, what needs to change or develop as far as CGM that's currently available is concerned? What needs to change?
Depends what you want. You know, we make you've got all these great CGMs, and then you make an implantable one that goes on your arm, and you basically have a transmitter the size of a breeze block to go on it. It depends what one. Ideal well for me, implantable CGM, and this is not medical. Stick it on my wrist, put my watch over it. I can read it with my watch. Come and ask me what my ideal world is, and then work back from that. Don't do what you can do or what you think you can get approved via approvals process. Actually challenge yourself. Ask us what we want, then challenge yourself to go do it.
Sure. Again, if we stick with CGM, Renza, Stephen, Josephine, what for you would be a significant development, advancement in CGM as it currently stands?
One thing would be to have different kind of alarms. I think it's hard with the 3-4 CGMs I've been using, that there are no, if you lose the device which should tell you what it looks like, you don't know what it is without it, so to speak. So I would like to have different sounds. Or why not let it speak? I mean, technology is so forward in everything else. Why not, instead of watching it, why can't the phone speak and says, your blood sugar is 5.0 every 10 minutes if I wanted to? Why do I have to look at the device? I would like to hear it.
Okay, how do the rest of you feel about that, just in terms of the CGM communicating
or shoes.
Or what, sorry, Josephine?
Or shoes. Say that in one particular reason I would like to see it, at another one I want to hear it. For instance, it's forbidden in Sweden to look at your phone while you're driving. It's forbidden to talk on your phone while you're driving. You have to have hands-free, which means I can't check my blood sugar in the phone when I'm driving, but I could listen to it if it would have been possible.
Okay. Stephen?
Yes, so I've actually heard from a couple of people who have said, look, I have eyesight issues, and the biggest challenge for them specifically in using new technology is that it doesn't speak to them, literally.
Okay. Andrea, for you, what are the big, as far as CGM is concerned, for example, what in your view are the most significant, the greatest unmet needs?
I agree with what's just been said, and I'm using a particularly old version of current of CGM, and so I think there's been some upgrades in terms of personalization of it, but I think it all comes back to that. I want to be able to choose to have different alarms at different times of day. I want to have range settings that are specific to exercise, specific to sleep, specific to my workday, specific to my weekend. And switch back and forth between them at will. So just really to be able to personalize that. And so if that means voice, or if it means different sounds for different alarms, it all comes back to making it fit into my life and not having to sort of figure out my life around how the CGM is going to work.
Sure. But as far as CGM is concerned, is that level of personalization not currently available?
It might be.
Okay, I mean, the rest of you, what's currently missing in terms of personalization? Renza, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I would like my CGM to not alarm during the day when there is only one alarm that I can't turn off, and I find that unbelievably frustrating that I cannot turn that off.
Which is?
I would like that to
Which
simply, it's the very low one.
Right.
I know I'm really low. I can hear it, I can feel it vibrating, I can feel it on my watch, all of these sorts of things, but it is a bloody loud alarm. And there are times where it is not appropriate. I'm sitting in a jazz club. I don't want that squealing at me, especially if I am downing an orange juice at the same time, so I've got this under control. I have actually had to turn my phone off, which seems to defeat the purpose, in concerts and at times where I have, it's all under control and I'm managing it. Now, I get why it's there. I understand it's a safety feature. I do understand that. And at night time, absolutely, that's a brilliant idea. But during the day, why can't I just have it all vibrating for me during the day? I just find that that's something that's quite frustrating. And seriously, I get annoyed, and this is not just CGM, this is with other things as well. I know if my blood sugar is above whatever it is that's been preset into the pump, that I am high. Please don't tell me that every time I enter that data into my machine. So, using a bolus wizard on the pump that I used to use, I think it was every time my blood sugar was above 14.9, it would tell me that I was high. Like, no shit, Sherlock, that's why I'm using you right now and using insulin. So those sorts of things that I get that they're all safety features, I understand that. They're not helpful. They're really not helpful, though.
Right. How important, again, this goes out to all of you, how important is it for medical device manufacturers to focus on designing, redesigning, advancing devices like insulin pens, pen needles, things like that, compared to CGM and interconnectivity, etc.?
Critical. That's critical.
It's probably more important for other parts of the world than these countries I got in front of me, because if you look at Africa or parts of Asia, other places where they certainly do not know neither what a pump nor a CGM is, I mean, they want to have, they deserve to have better equipment too.
I mean, Grumps, for you, does this need for developing or continuing to focus on development of pens and pen needles, does that only relate to certain parts of the world or not? Where does the need lie there?
I'd say it needs to, well, the reason it relates to certain parts of the world is because they haven't got the money or the infrastructure to get the kit we've got now. It's not because whether they need it or not. They need, in my opinion, they need to have the ability to select the right devices for them. It always comes to me. Look at cars. A lot of things that end up in your car start with Formula One. So if you take some of this kit as a Formula One, then let's go back and apply this. Smart pens. We can all upload our pumps. We can all upload our CGM. We can all upload our meters. Not every pen, a smart pen. Why can't your pen Bluetooth to your phone? And and again, interoperability. It should go any phone with any meter data. So we could be able to do it for people who want to use it. I think it's absolutely vital. Pen needles are vital. It's not just adults who use this stuff. Kids use this stuff. So they need much smaller doses of insulin than we do, and not everyone can have a pump in the UK or anywhere else. Same with pen needles. We all see the lovely adverts about painless finger prick, and if you're going to put a hole in yourself, it's going to hurt at some point. But let's do everything we can to make it hurt less, because we've got some very needle-phobic people out there, adults and children, and that stops them wanting to do their injections or putting insulin in their body. You can't put your insulin in your body without sticking a hole in you. So let's make it as easy as possible, because if people are scared to do it, at least one out there is going to do it less than they need to, and that's not going to have a great outcome for them. So it's not just about, it's about the outcomes on people, not just the kit. That's just the enabler.
So if we think about pens just briefly, in terms of developments where insulin pens are concerned, maybe even thinking about interoperability, what is it you want? What in your view is the greatest need for development?
I don't use pens anymore, so it would be my speculation. I don't want them to be forgotten. Go around any again, I'm lucky. I go to conferences, I go around the exhibitions. How many new pen companies, how many things do you see? And when you do see it at work, how often have you got healthcare professionals queued up to look at what they've got? Not very often.
Because
Something new.
Because it's not shiny. It's not shiny and new. It's not exciting.
what needs to happen? I appreciate you're not currently using a pen, but just having your ears to the ground and being relatively dominant prominent in this space. What, in your view, could change or would represent a significant advancement on what's currently available as far as pens are concerned?
This is a condition that's managed by data, whether you're doing it manually, writing everything down, analysing it, sitting with graphs, or whether you're doing it with Loop. Loop takes a hell of a lot of data. It's all data-driven. So the easier you can make it to get people to get all their data into one place to handle it and manage the diabetes the way they want is to have all their devices Bluetooth it to their phone or to a cloud or something like that. You don't want to have to, some people do like running there, but you've got people. If I was back on MDI, I'd have a pen. I'd write down my doses. This is if I logged. All right, this is theoretical. I'd write that down. I'd have my meter. It may go up to a piece of software. They'll probably have something else that made a graph, a spreadsheet manually. I'd want to spend as little time doing that as possible. Ultimately, my CGM, I can go online and it's all there 'cause it's cloud, and I hit print report. Why can't we enable that to be more easy for people to use MDI and other things? Again, so you go and look at what we can do, and then go back. How can we help other people do that if they want to?
Okay.
I agree with Chris that it's really about reducing the burden of the time that it takes and the effort that it takes to manage diabetes. And so if you can not write down those numbers, the time, the dose, and everything about what your pen usage is, if that can go directly to be uploaded to the cloud, to a phone, to an app, whatever, and be, again, once again, talking about interoperability. If your blood glucose meter, your exercise from your exercise apps on your phone, your insulin, whether it comes from a pump or a pen, it shouldn't make a difference. All of that information should be able to go up to the same place and be analyzed together.
In terms of connected health, thinking maybe more specifically around CGM and beyond, in particular the ability to share data, share trending insights, to follow, how important in your view is that?
Depends. Sorry, I'm speaking first. Depends what people want. Being able to check data and follow data is really important to some people. It's, to me, I like the way I'm in a hotel. I don't share my data with anyone because I don't feel I need to. It's a very personal thing. But then you've also got sharing the data and following the data from specific CGM. But you've got a lot of work that people like Tidepool are doing about getting data and getting more and more data coming in. So I think that is really important. If people are happy for their data to be used, for better products and all the things that those companies are doing. So, I think when we talk about share, we think about one product or one thing, but actually it's wider than that. Sharing data to actually get more statistics out there and get that wider range of what the difference is for different people.
Okay, so how is it wider than that? I mean, Stephen, Renzo, what are your thoughts on that? Beyond CGM, what are the opportunities as far as sharing data is concerned?
So I think what Chris was saying about being able to at least get the data all in one place so that you can mash it all together and maybe derive some analytics out of it to say.
What data are you thinking of here, though, Stephen?
I'm sorry, ask that a question again, please.
You're referring to data, but specifically, what data are you referring to here?
Any and all data we can get our hands on. So if it's pump data, it's pump data. If it's CGM data, it's CGM data. If I'm using MDI, if I'm just using a meter in MDI, making sure that I get that data in one place, wherever it is, so that it can be used by me, by healthcare professionals, so that we can look at it and analyze what's going on, and maybe we find a trend here or there. My endocrinologist is very good at finding little things in my diabetes management that maybe I miss. Well, if my endocrinologist doesn't have all of the information, then she may miss something there. So I don't want her to miss anything.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I appreciate we've covered a multitude of issues, some of which we've covered quite quickly. I'm just conscious of time. For those who are listening in and watching, for you guys, what may be the one or two key take-homes you would hope they would walk away with from this evening or today's session? What is it you hope that they will remember as far as a key take-home is concerned?
For me, and I think Tina hit on it, it's think about the person, not the condition. Yeah, talk to the person, not the condition. See what we want and the way we use this. I've seen, you see people that don't have the condition and are selling it, wearing the devices, which is fine, and I get, all right, it may wind me up. All right, it does wind me up. I get why they do it, but you can, if you don't have type 1, doesn't matter who you are, it's not criticism, and good on you. You can wear a pump all you want, you can wear CGM all you want, but you're not gonna get that alarm Renza talked about. You're not gonna know that that's really bloody annoying, and if you're in a meeting, you want to turn it off. You're gonna get as much information as you want on the pump, but you're never gonna make a bolus decision out of it. So you can only find out what it's like to use this kit and not just wear it if you talk to people like us, but not just people like us, as many as possible.
Right, okay. So beyond that, I mean, Tina, Andrea, Renzo, etc., what for you are the kind of the messages, take-homes you'd hope those listening to today's conversation would be? What are the key take-homes you most hope they will remember?
We've spoken a lot about engaging us earlier when it comes to design, but I want to flag engaging us early when it comes to the language that you're using around things. So that is the language that you're using in the devices, but also then when you're looking at promotional material and the information around things, because we use different language, and certain things are important to us. And I find a great frustration often in the corporate babble that is included in, the glossy, shiny brochures, and, photos of people using CGM are inevitably a woman with a perfectly flat stomach or a guy with a perfect six-pack, and obviously, it's a miracle because they've got the photo of the first time they've ever put a CGM in, so that's great. I think there needs to be a bit of reality in everything like that, because I'll tell you now, I throw all of that stuff out. So using the right language, using the right images, stop hiding the conversations that we really want to have and be talking about. Stop calling sex intimate moments in your stupid stuff. Like, I mean, really, for God's sake, what people with diabetes have sex. And I think that it's just, I find it's just this recurring, frustrating theme that, all of that sort of advertising and promotional stuff looks exactly the same. The language is really, really critically important. And there are a number of people who can steer you correctly in that. You don't even need to talk to us. There are language position statements now. Just follow those. But do talk to us, because we'll pick up stuff that you probably haven't even heard, haven't even thought of.
Okay, thank you. Josephine, for you, what do you hope those listening most remember from our session?
Probably that, like all of us have said, that we're all different. We all got different angles from it, different attitudes towards diabetes. One thing I think also is important is really for the suppliers to be there and push their development further. There is a lot of homemade solutions in Sweden now. For instance, for Libre, there is a big blog thing, website thing for something which is homemade. And I mean, if a homemade thing is used the wrong way, or if it simply doesn't work because it's homemade, we have a very bad situation.
Right. Okay. Stephen, Andrea, Tina, for you, what just briefly, what is the key take home from our discussion?
Well, I would say that, please engage with us. We may not always, the conversation with us may not always be exactly what you want to hear, but in the end, we all want manufacturers to make the best product possible that works for the majority of the people that we serve. So please engage with us. We can certainly, we are certainly willing to talk and work through the processes with you.
When you say us, Stephen, who you referring to? People who blog about, or the broader population of people with diabetes, or both?
I mean both. I mean us in terms of, because we're easy to find. We're on the internet. We're easy to find. So it's good to have us involved in conversation. But we all know people who are not on the internet all the time. We all know people who are living with diabetes who may have a different perspective on things. And I know 5 people that I could probably name right now who would probably love to give their opinion on what they would love to see a new product look like.
Right. Okay. Right. Thank you. Tina, for you, what is the key take home? Maybe even beyond what others have already said.
So I agree in terms of acknowledging our individuality as patients, and seeing that we're not just patients with diabetes, but also human beings with daily lives and different kinds of daily lives. But also something I wanted to say earlier, but was the fact that please try to find new ways to reduce plastic waste. I'm not riding a glittery unicorn here. I know that it's important to keep everything sterile and stuff, but it's important to find new ways to package the things we're working with, or to find new ways on how to broaden the amount of people that are using throwaway pens, for example, and just things like these are, I think, really, really important these days.
Thank you, Andrea. For you, what is the key
I don't know how much more there is to add. I definitely agree with what others have said about treating us as individuals and engaging with people with diabetes, whether it be sort of the people who are more engaged in the community because we have I don't know, we can take a sort of a broader look at things because we have a broader knowledge of what exists and things like that, but as well as people who are not as experienced with using the newer technologies, but who may have needs that aren't being met because of the fact that they're coming from a different space and they aren't as connected. So I think that's really important. And then one of the things that we said that I wanted to repeat was to engage us as really, I guess, early on in the process as possible. And I know that's that can be scary for companies because there's a lot of secrecy in terms of development of devices. It takes years and years to get them from the idea stage to the market. And so making more people aware of that process can be a little bit difficult, but we can sign non-disclosure agreements just as people within the company can. And so we can still be involved in that process without disclosing to the world that this is going on at the same time.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm just conscious of the time we're running. Before we end, is there anything else you'd like to say or mention that you don't feel you've had the chance to?
Yes, Meg, very quickly. I know I said privilege at the beginning, and I wanted to talk about that just really quickly. Also, we are the most undiverse group of people sitting in, I'm looking at us, gosh, we're boring. Can we please, please, please have conversations with far more diverse populations? We need people with disabilities represented, and we need people of colour represented, and we don't need this done in a token way. It needs to be done in a meaningful way and properly. It's a very big frustration of mine that people with diabetes are engaged in a token way. It is so much tokenism all the time, but then more diverse groups within there. So, we need people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, and we need people who don't all look like us, because we are such a narrow group of, our opinions are so similar and narrow, and that doesn't in any way delegitimize what we're saying or what our experiences are, but please, can we broaden the voices that we're listening to?
Sure. Okay. Sorry, Stephen?
I said I could not agree more. That is absolutely right.
Sure. Anything else further you'd like to mention, anyone would like to mention before we end the session? Right. Well, thank you once again for your time and for your insights. It's been really, really helpful, and appreciate you all coming along and offering your thoughts. So thank you once again, and wish you a great evening or day or morning, Renza.
I'm going back to bed.
Thank you, everyone.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.